For USCFootball.com, I'm Connor Morrissette, joined as always here during fall camp with Chris Trevino. It's time for another episode of Instant Analysis, this time after USC's 8th fall camp practice. In a little bit of a different location today. There's some construction going on campus, so we had to change our spot. Chris, we got to start with some bad news. Prophet Brown is out for the foreseeable future, the nickelback with a non-contact injury. Lincoln Riley said after practice that they expect to have Prophet back at some point during the 2025 season, but it's such a shame because he was a guy who had waited his turn. He was pushing for a starting role potentially at the nickel spot, also rotating in at corner. The first major injury of camp. Unfortunately, it's Prophet Brown.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and it stings just a little bit more because a lot of people were rooting for Prophet Brown. Easy guy to root for.
I was rooting for Prophet Brown.
Yeah, a guy who has stuck here a while, waited his turn, went through the process, in this day and age in the transfer portal, could have been easy for him to go seek somewhere else to kind of play early. But I asked him about that, in the media day, and he said, I love USC. This is where I want to be. So he had the right message, the right mentality, and he was set up to be USC starting nickel going to the season, a guy who could play nickel and outside quarterback, something we've seen him do throughout his career. And obviously in spring camp has had some good moments in fall camp, but then obviously this injury is a blow to the defense and to, just a feel-good story for the season with Prophet Brown. So that one does really hurt. Wasn't given the exact injury. We assume it's a lower body injury. We saw him on the motorized scooter and in crutches this week. So yeah, it's assuming it's a lower body injury, and we'll have to keep monitoring for that as the season goes on. But as you said, Lincoln Riley expects him to get back at some point. Just sounds like it'll be after the first half of the year.
Definitely feel bad for him. That's, of course, when USC's schedule ratchets up a level and just gets harder. But if he can return this year, that will, of course, be a good thing. So who's going to fill in for him, Chris? Kamari Ramsey, who is going to play a ton for USC. He might line up at the nickel at some points. Potentially DJ Harvey could play there. But I think Alex Graham is a guy who could see more of a role than maybe we thought with this injury, the true freshman from Michigan.
Yeah, that's the thing about Dan Lynn's defense, and obviously losing a defensive back, it's not like there's positions you can make up with this, and defensive back is one of those positions. They have a lot of options. Some are younger than you would like, but they have a lot of talent in that room and a lot of guys that can work around. And this is why they cross-train these guys, something that Danton Lynn, Doug Belk, and all of those guys preach. But, Kamari Ramsey, as we know, took reps there in the spring. We saw DJ Harvey earlier this week working in the nickel position. He played in the slot at San Jose State for periods, so he has experience there. Alex Graham is someone you mentioned, we should buy more stock in him. I would back that up, buy more stock in him. Kevin Longstreet has also been working as a slot nickel and someone we've seen routinely working with the nickels in practice. So, again, another option there. There are plenty of names we could throw out there. Marcellus Williams is, I think, a person that you could maybe just try out and see what happens. There are other freshmen. James Johnson has been working there. So there is a whole roster of guys that we could potentially see there at the nickel position, and we'll see what Dan Lynn cooks up with. But again, it's a position you can rotate guys, get different looks, and again, 2 easier first games, so we'll see probably different bodies in there and see who's the right fit moving into Big Ten.
A lot of options for USC there. A few other injuries to report on today. Nothing as major as Brown's. Jacoby Lane is still limited. Lincoln Riley talked about that today. They're still waiting for him to be fully clear. They're hoping that's going to be soon, but he's still limited. Eric Gentry not even present today. And that was something that Lincoln Riley said. It's just a fall camp injury. We don't expect anything major from that. So hopefully he'll be back next week when this weekend when USC resumes practices. But he wasn't there as well. A few other guys were missing. Besides the Prophet injury, though, it still sounds like fall camp bumps and bruises.
Yeah, just some standard bumps and bruises. But it was notable that it seems like they got Elijah Page back in the fold. He was out there, has been working in the sneakers, but no cleats today, fully padded, and no sneakers with them, so it looks like he was back to being a full participant, which is a really good sign for USC.
A few of the top players today from practice who Lincoln Riley talked about, because today was full pads. I kind of buried the lead here. Full padded practice. They went live. We weren't able to watch today, but we asked Lincoln Riley who were some of the standouts. He mentioned Desmond Stevens, the linebacker, Kennedy Urlacher at safety. That's the second time Riley's mentioned Kennedy Urlacher. Maybe he's pushing Christian Pierce at the safety spot. We continue to hear his name. DJ Jordan was someone else who came up from Riley, the receiver, and then Eli Sanders, the running back. It's tough to comment on these when we can't see it, but those are a few of the guys who got praised today.
Yeah, I mean, you're circling Kennedy Urlacher because you're looking at the trends, and that's a second time, as you mentioned, that Lincoln Riley has mentioned the Notre Dame transfer, trying to get his feet wet with his defense and learn everything. His football IQ, we're assuming, is pretty high given his dad, Brian Urlacher. So Kenny Urlacher making some waves. Maybe we'll see him line up, get some dime package, maybe even a little bit of nickel. I don't know. We'll see. A lot of versatility with him.
You were higher on him with your top 30 most important Trojans list than I was. Maybe that's a victory lap for Chris. We'll have to see as the fall camp continues. A few other observations that we were able to have, because we can go in for 10 to 15 minutes before. Mekhi Lemon still looks so natural returning those punts. Chad Savage, the inside receivers coach, he throws exercise balls at the punt returners after they catch him to try to throw him off like a would-be tackler. And Lemon, I don't think he's ever been hit once. Can't say that of the other guys. DJ Jordan had a drop today during some of the throws on air. That was before they wet the balls. So today, a few graduate assistants, they were playing like Big Ten weather conditions, and they put some footballs in water. They sprayed them with water from water bottles, and it wasn't pretty. There were a lot of drops, but then we put it together. They're dropping so many of these balls because they're wet.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out, what is going on. It was like a comedy of, drops back to back, almost, 3 in a row at times. And it wasn't just, the drops. There were some passes that were off as well, which didn't help. So, yeah, once we figured out the balls were affected, it became a little more clear. But, again, something they'll probably be working on. Jacoby Lane dropped 2 balls. That never happens. Mekhi Lemon dropped a ball. It was a little bit too high, but it hit him in the hands, and he didn't come down with it, which is super rare as well. So yeah, it was definitely not a great catching day, but again, the balls were under certain conditions, so we'll see if that improves moving forward, and we'll keep close eye if they start doing that again.
Any other observations from you? We can move on if not.
Notice the offensive line was working on run blocking today, obviously getting Elijah Page back, getting him to work there. They're pretty physical out there. I mean, we'll have some videos up, but they're really getting after it, and again, full pads, offensive linemen trying to make a statement.
Hayden Treater was pretty physical today. The guard, he was blocking someone. They didn't get off the block at one point, and then he said, get off me, and threw him off. And just that intensity is great to see. And Lincoln Riley, in his post-practice comments, mentioned Hayden Treater. He didn't call him the most surprising offensive lineman, but a guy who's maybe made the biggest strides because he hasn't been healthy. He last year missed so much time. I think they like what they see in Treater, and he's a bigger player, someone who, with this DJ Wingfield stuff, could potentially help fill in at guard. All of a sudden, Chris, I will say, I do feel much better about the guard depth than I did once we heard that DJ Wingfield stuff. It was like, oh man, they already didn't have a lot of depth there, but Riley backed that up as well. It just seems like they like what they've seen from these guards, even without a guy who's a projected starter in Wingfield.
Yeah, bring DJ back if they can, but yeah, they're planning for the worst and hoping for the best in this situation. So getting those guys reps in practice, working with the ones, working with the twos. Obviously, the first 2 games we'll see a lot of development time for those guys on the 2 deep. And yeah, Hayden Treater starting to pop a little bit. He wasn't a guy that immediately came to mind when Lincoln Riley was talking about it at Big Ten Media Day, but now it seems like he's getting a little confidence. Missed time with injury. I'm a big fan of Hayden Treater. He's 6'6", 320 pounds, reminds me a little bit of Andrew Voorhees, who was a guy who was able to help early in his career. We'll see what happens. Micah Benuelos got some love from Danton Lynn early today from practicing pretty well. So, again, they're building that depth up. Makai Saina got some love as well. So, again, got to get those guys as much reps as they can because a lot of those guys just haven't played due to injury.
I was going to bring up Benuelos. You mentioned it. So, coming out of the tunnel, he was talking with Danton Lynn, and Danton Lynn's it sounded like was talking about how he was watching the film, and he just said he'd been practicing really well. Benuelos was the second guy Lincoln Riley mentioned today after Treater for some of those impressive younger offensive linemen. Benuelos, of course, in his 3rd year, but he is looking more and more like a reliable option at guard potentially, so that's a very encouraging sign. He's also battled some health stuff. And then Aaron Dunn, the tackle, that was another guy who Riley highlighted. He's a true freshman. He was here in the spring, but banged up. It seems to be a common theme. A lot of these offensive linemen were hurt. He's now fully healthy. So just getting everyone in the room, the guys they've recruited over the years healthy, is significant, and we're just waiting for Wingfield, of course. That's going to come August 18th. It sounds like we'll get a decision on him from the courts. One other thing with Lincoln Riley's comments, he called Wayman Jordan a diamond in the rough, the JUCO running back transfer. I'm just going to come out and say it, Chris. I don't think expectations for him could be any higher outside of a returning player. Like, for a new guy who was at the junior college ranks last year, they are really hyping him up. And that's not always the case with some of these newer players. I think Riley really, really likes Wayman Jordan, and I know the fans are really excited to see him too.
I think the Two-Star podcast also had a lot to do with hyping that up and Gerard's words on how special he could be when you watch the tape. But yeah, there is that little bit of hesitation because he is coming from the junior college ranks. You don't know how it's going to translate immediately, but finding holes and having vision and, explosiveness, that all kind of translates in general. So it's easier for a skill position player to make that jump like that than, say, like an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. So I feel pretty confident that whatever happens, Wayman Jordan is going to be a good player. Maybe he's not going to reach that special level into maybe another season, but I think he's going to be really good. He's going to be 1,000 yards good. I would say yes. I think he has the capability to get 1,000 yards. All Lincoln Riley RB1s have come really close to that. They average at least 750 yards. Woody Marks was the first one to get over 1,000 yards. We know there's some injuries in the past with other guys, but I think Wayman Jordan stays healthy. I think he could be a breakout guy in the Big Ten.
He might be the story of fall camp so far, so definitely a name to watch. Jaden Maiava spoke after practice. He talked about how he has a great connection with Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane, and then he threw out DJ Jordan in there. He's a guy who's been getting more reps with the first and second team. Like, he's just playing more. Sophomore, a guy who took last year to kind of get up to speed with college football. I don't know how big of a role he'll have, but the indications from what we've seen, I think he's going to be out there. I think he's going to be playing.
Seems like he's been given the opportunity. He's kind of like an older guy. Hasn't really played, though. We didn't see him at all, in the Vegas Bowl. We thought maybe that'd be an opportunity for him. But, yeah, this is going to be his first real test. He'll have those 2 games in the start to kind of audition himself to say, hey, I need to play this season. Needs to cut down on the drops and being consistent with his route running, his catches. But, yeah, he could be a good contributing player for this offense. And they need someone outside of, Lane and Lemon. As you know, defenses are going to be keying on those guys. So opportunity all around for anyone to step up in the wide receiver room.
I asked Maiava which defensive player is making his life the most difficult, and he rolled his eyes and reared back and said, oh, man, it's Eric Gentry. He is very challenging. When I look at him and he is in the way of one of my progressions, I almost immediately go to the next progression. And it's not a hot take. I said this on the podcast with Ryan yesterday. Eric Gentry is super important, but he's a player who can elevate the defense from being pretty good to potentially being great. His health is so important, so of course it's a little scary that he wasn't out there today. Seems like it was a minor thing, as we talked about, but just making sure that he's out there for the whole season, that is one of the biggest keys to this year.
Yeah, and the minor things with your guys, if it's minor, don't push it. You need that guy. He's super important, and obviously he's battled some injury stuff with the concussions, the ankle injury his first year, so be precautious with a guy like that. You want to keep him out there as long as you can, but you also want to don't run him into the ground. And durability has been a thing, so you don't need him to be out there for ball practice all the time. You know what you got in Eric Gentry. You got a special player. You got an All-American caliber player. So take off the gas when you need, even though that's hard because he wants to be out there. He's a very passionate player, obviously. A lightning rod, for this defense, and I call him the talisman of the defense because when he's out there playing well, everyone gets elevated, as you said.
Such a big year for him, his last in college football. We also heard from Tobias Raymond, Wayman Jordan, Lake McCree, Zach Williams. I'll just start with a couple observations from those first 2 guys. So Tobias Raymond, I was actually posting my Prophet Brown story, the injury story, so I didn't get a chance to hear from him. But Lincoln Riley talked about how with Raymond, him and Justin Tawanu, they're continuing to push each other. Riley was not ready to name a starter at right tackle. He said depending on what happens with the DJ Wingfield situation, both those guys have position versatility. I think if the season started tomorrow, it's probably Tobias Raymond, but Justin Tawanu, Riley said, is practicing better than he was in the spring, and he's making that a competition, which is great to see. With Wayman Jordan, he was asked a lot about junior college and his Junkyard Dog nickname. We've been over it before, but he got that from his AAU basketball coach when he would just go up against the older players as a younger guy, and people, as I said, seem to be really excited about him. He has a calm, cool confidence to him. He's not overly in your face. He's more reserved when he's talking with us, and he just seems ready to rock. Chris, you heard from Lake McCree. Takeaways from that conversation.
I talked to Lake about something we've mentioned before in Ghost Notes and on Instant Analysis, is that he feels like he's in the best shape of his life, which I know is like a cliche thing, but we actually feel like we see it on the field.
Agreed.
Like he's moving super well, looks a little slimmer, athletic, healthy, and we talked a little bit about that he said that extra rest was key for him. He said he did some different strength stuff in this offseason, which has really helped him. So he feels great. Now that the pads have come on, he feels even better. And yeah, I said, you look great out there. You must feel it. He was like, yeah, I feel really good right now. This is the best I've ever felt in my college career. So I'm high on Lake McCree, as always. As the overall tight end position, we'll see what's going to happen with that group. 0 touchdowns last year. I think they'll at least score 1 in 2025. But yeah, I'm excited to see what Lake McCree can bring in his final season, as a veteran and leading a young tight end room.
We mentioned how earlier this week Marquise Lee showed up at practice, the Biletnikoff winner at USC. Zach Williams said that Lee met with the team. Any details about that conversation?
A couple Sarah guys, that's why I asked him. But yeah, he said Marquise Lee spoke to the team. I'm not sure if it was like specifically the wide receivers or the whole team as well, but he said it was great just to take in some of the knowledge that he has. And the message was about how setting the tone in practice, kind of what they did back when he was there. So I think that was kind of the big message that Lee, the All-American and Biletnikoff winner, wanted to instill on these young guys. So it sounded like they heeded his words.
Let's end with some offensive line talk. It's been a big theme of this show. I think we both agree, Chris, that the depth of the offensive line, we feel better about it than we did at the beginning of camp. But what about the first 5? How confident are you that this offensive line can be above average in the Big Ten and lead this team to the 9-10 wins that a lot of fans are really hoping for this year? Been a lot of talk about this offensive line. It seems like that's kind of the X factor right now. I have a hard time saying with 100% certainty I think it can be above average in the Big Ten, but I'm not saying that's not going to happen. We just need to see it.
Am I factoring in Wingfield here, or am I taking him completely out of the equation?
I guess take him completely out, and hopefully that changes. But right now I think the odds are better that he won't be available, unfortunately.
With Wingfield, I felt pretty good about them being a solid to above average group, which I think is a significant step forward from last year's, which was, I think, at their highest, a solid group to below average. So if you get on the other side of that solid ranking, I think you're pretty good, especially with a mobile quarterback like Jada Maeva. I feel good about Elijah Page, even if he doesn't maybe play to like number 1 overall pick kind of level. I think he has a super high ceiling, and I think he gets there, or at least close to that, with Zach Hansen, a guy who has worked with tackles and has produced a first-round tackle in his career. And I feel really good about John Reed. I feel really solid about his play in the middle, and no hate to Jonah Monheim, but it was a little bit up and down last season, as the whole line was. I think you'll get a little bit more stability as a guy who has played multiple years at center. We've all talked about this before, but then the rest of it, just a little bit too much question marks for me to really answer that. Like, what's going on with Alani Noah there at that guard spot? Micah Benuelos at the other guard spot that, trying to fight with DJ Wingfield down. Tobias Raymond, you look at him, I really want him to be good, because you look at him come off practice holding his pads, he looks like an NFL dude, and he has grown so much physically. He would be a great story for USC's development, but it just needs to happen on the field. And this, harkens back to something Elijah Page said. You don't know if you're going to be good, or you're going to play well until you're actually thrown into it. You have to be out there into the fire, and we haven't seen that with Tobias Raymond outside of a couple instances, the Michigan game, up and down, but he did his best in there, and then Las Vegas Bowl again. Maybe not an elite performance, but something you can build off for the future. So those first 2 games are going to be critical for him to kind of get his confidence up going into a Big Ten schedule. So again, just so many question marks at those 3 spots for me that I can't really say for certain it's going to be a solid unit. I'm kind of wait and see mode. If you add DJ in there, that's a lot less question marks for me. With potentially Alani and him as a returning starter and DJ, you only had really 1 question mark there with Tobias Raymond. Now you got like 3 you're kind of figuring out here in fall camp. So again, they're going to have time to build in those first 2 games, which are going to be so critical. Whatever happens with DJ, he's going to be coming back late if he does, so that'll be time to build chemistry. But in the overall sense, I'm still kind of wait and see on this O-line. Again, obviously, I feel better with DJ in that mix and not have to shuffle things around. I feel a little bit better about Micah Benuelos. I do, actually. Alani Noah, got to figure out what's going on with him and Kalon Miller battling out there. I don't know if that's a great sign for your returning starter. Maybe it's just a motivational thing. But all in all, you have 2 easy games to ease into. So right now, I'm kind of still wait and see. Just too many question marks for me right now.
I think we're all in wait and see mode, but thank you for that analysis, Chris. I know
that was
the fans.
Too long. I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't. I know the fans really appreciate it. That's the hot button topic right now. We will be back with Instant on Wednesday. The team has a couple practices before then, but we're not coming back until Wednesday, so bit of a prolonged break. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. He's Chris Trevino. I'm Connor Morrissette. See you then.